Welcome back to the Life LatesTadapt podcast, Adapt to Thrive. In our previous episodes, we've looked at the science, the community, and the physical construction of our living laboratories. We've seen how nature can be a super solution to climate change. But for these solutions to truly transform our region, we cannot rely on isolated experiments. We must move toward mainstreaming, making green infrastructure a standard part of how every city is built and managed. Today, we are discussing the strategic roadmaps for this transformation, urban greening plans. These plans identify climate-related problem areas like heat islands and flood zones to improve both city resilience and the well-being of citizens. To help us map out this future, we are joined by a panel of planners from both the Life LatesTadapt project and the Urban Life Circles project. Liena Grītja from the Riga municipality, Zanda Lapse from the Valmiera municipality, Ance Ludboža from the Cēsis municipality, and Annalisa Und, Urban Biodiversity Coordinator for Urban Life Circles in Tartu City. Together, we'll explore how these plans differ and how they turn big ideas into urban action. For our listeners, they can imagine and think of a city without, for example, the urban greening plan, like a smartphone without an operating system. You might have the best apps like individual rain gardens or parks, but without this operating system, those apps can't talk to each other and share resources like water and shade. The urban greening plan is a system update that ensures every green space works together to keep the city running cool and smooth, also, for example, during a storm. In Life LatesTadapt project, we focus on operating green infrastructure in municipal planning to enhance climate resilience. A plan isn't just a list of trees, it's a strategical tool for survival. Liena, Riga is currently developing its urban greening plan. How does this go beyond simply landscaping to actually identify, for example, the most effective locations for flood prevention?
So Riga's urban greening plan is a policy planning document. So we have set out specific policy targets, and reduction of flood risk is among them. To understand where would the city's intervention be most effective, we, during this Life LatesTadapt project, our colleagues from the Riga Technical University have developed a stormwater runoff model. So we see which areas of the city are the most subjected to flood risk during an extreme precipitation event. What we have done in the city is we have looked at these different territories. We have looked how densely built it is, how many people live there, how many people work there, to prioritize these different territories that are in these flood risk areas. So we know those where are the most, the greatest number of affected people, that are the areas where we should intervene first. Something else that we are doing in the greening plan is we are tackling rainwater governance as well. So in the greening plan, we are proposing different policies and measures to strengthen coordination and cooperation between different entities of the city to improve rainwater management and thus reduce the flood risk. And finally, in the framework of the greening plan, we are looking at the ways to improve our data. We want to involve citizens as well to report on the specific areas where flooding is observed during a heavy precipitation. So to sum up, we are looking at the flooding from different perspectives. So where should we develop infrastructure first? Where should we improve governance? And finally, what data is lacking for better decision-making? Thank you.
And while Riga is focusing maybe also more on flood resilience, but not only, Tartu is looking at the city as a living network for all species. Anna, you are coordinating the urban biodiversity of the Urban Life Circles project in Tartu. Your goal is to create a green ring around the city. And how does this connecting green spaces in this way support Tartu's biodiversity and its ability to adapt to climate change?
Hi, so a few words as an introduction about our project. The Life Circles project is a cooperation between Tartu in Estonia, Aarhus in Denmark, and Riga. So we focus at bringing the approach of using and also marketing nature-based solutions as an option to, or like a mindset in designing and managing urban spaces. So in terms of Tartu, the project proposal submitted the idea of creating a circle of really well-functioning and accessible green spaces within the city, hence the name. But we rather concentrate on establishing a better connectivity between all types of green spaces. We have parks with really like central and prominent location. We have private gardens. We have the riparian zone, which contours the river, protected areas and sanctuaries. So it's we use like a series of design and management techniques to improve the health of different types of green spaces, which is, well, it's hard to say it's easier, but it's relatively easier than to actually make better connections or improve the connectivity of different green spaces. So if we look at our project areas map, it looks more like a patchwork, and the connectivity issue is what makes it perhaps the most challenging. Because it's one thing to improve the well-being of a green space, but changing an existing urban environment outside green space borders, it often needs a lot of persuasion, maybe larger strategies, longer terms, and maybe it's sometimes just more technically difficult if you want to approach streetscape, for instance. But there is also really, really small things that we've tested and being really successful at. If we look at if we maybe just come down to species levels, and perhaps well, 3 examples. For instance, we've improved the connectivity of wetlands and really marginal wetlands with creating small puddles for stormwater management from one side, and the other side is that if we park even melted snow water in spring term into smaller frog puddles, then amphibians have a much better possibilities to raise their young and then leave out of the lower spaces with water if it dries out during the summer season. We've also established bridges for squirrels, because they tend to they do move up in the crowns of trees. But sometimes the trees are not connected very well enough, so they need to cross streets on street level, which is really hazardous and sadly lethal as well. So we've established a few bridges for squirrels, and then also hedgehogs as an example. So we had a really successful and really, really popular project of establishing connections and gateways for hedgehogs, which is a super simple technique that every gardener and every plot owner can establish, just cutting really small holes into your fences, because if the movement corridors are cut off by fences, the hedgehogs just end up hanging out on streetscapes, which is really hazardous for them as well. So that's that.
Okay, it sounds really interesting. But planning for one threat often helps solve another. And in Valmiera, the greening plan is also a tool for managing extreme temperatures. Zanda, how does planning process help Valmiera identify heat island effects and map out problem areas where nature can provide the most cooling?
Yes, for Valmiera, this plan combines climate data mapping and urban design analysis to pinpoint where the city overheats and where green infrastructure can have the biggest impact. And so from the plan, we have identified urban heat island patterns, and usually they are dense buildings, little tree cover, large parking lots, wide roads, and dark surfaces. And from analyzing and understanding those patterns, the plan document, we have created priority maps showing streets where shades is lacking, and neighborhoods with insufficient green spaces, sealed surfaces that intensify heat, and locations where stormwater and heat risks overlap. And understanding those maps and understanding that all the city is actually kind of a network rather than separated plots, we are going further, and we want to understand the data that can evaluate where interventions would work best, such as planting trees and expanding parks, and where restoring wetlands can work as the best solution, and adding green roofs or creating shaded pedestrian corridors or using permeable surfaces. So the plan nature-based solutions can cool cities through shading or evaporate from plants, and reduce the heat absorption. So to sum up, actually this document helps for municipality to understand the overall situation, and it helps us also easier to talk with the inhabitants and with developers. And in general, we hope that all this plan in general will work as a system to prevent this overheating areas, and it will become much cooler and nicer for inhabitants.
And also moving also to the policy levels, could say, making nature-based solutions the new normal requires also a business model that respects local identity while meeting national climate goals. Ante, Cēsis is a historic town. There's a question, maybe, how do you balance the preservation of cultural heritage with the need for modern green infrastructure in your greening plan?
Yeah, in Cēsis, this is really one of the central questions, because Cēsis is a city with rich historical heritage. So we cannot think about greening simply as adding more plants wherever there happens to be space or where we think it would look good. In the old town, we are dealing with narrow streets, a lot of heritage buildings, and archaeological layers, and a very sensitive public space and public environment where interventions can influence not only heritage values but also the visual character and also the social role of the space in everyday urban life. So that is why our approach is not only about radically changing the historic setting and pushing something big and new, but it is about finding nature-based solutions that work within the city context and the history and respect its character. And in some places that may involve trees, but in others where there is not so much space, it may mean smaller scale or more like flexible solutions, such as planning containers, some vertical greenery or shading elements, water absorbing surfaces, and other rainwater management solutions, which are adapted to the historical context. And for us, the greening plan is especially valuable because it helps to shift the conversation from greening as a decoration and towards greening as a tool for climate resilience. And it actually gives us framework to ask, where can green infrastructure help reduce urban heat, manage rainwater, improve comfort, and at the same time preserve the identity of TAES. And yeah, historic towns need to adapt to climate change, but they need to do it with care. And for example, the National Heritage Board does not always support green measures because its primary responsibility, understandably, is the preservation of buildings. And if a tree is growing too close to a building, it may cause damage, and the board may sometimes recommend removing it. However, in our view, in TAES, trees do belong in the old town, and it should not be seen as a choice between preserving a building or keeping a tree. The real question is, how can these two coexist in a thoughtful way? And yeah, and one of the greening plan's guidelines is that we must preserve cultural, historical, recreational, and visual aesthetic values. In practice, this means not only protecting the existing landscape, but also making sure that any new solutions or projects are carefully integrated and don't intervene with history. And creating the overall attractiveness of the old town involves a range of mutually reinforcing actions, which is reducing traffic flows and improving air quality. And as a part of the development of the greening plan, the workshop was held on May 2025 to explore a shared vision for the old town's public space as a sustainable, safe and green urban environment. And the discussion focused on how to reduce the urban heat island effect, improve rainwater management, and participants looked at the challenges such as overheating, limited greenery, lack of shade, and discussed possible nature-based solutions, including new green areas, green roofs, walls, and more sustainable mobility options. And at the same time, the workshop highlighted that there are still quite different views on how the old town should develop, and public opinion on traffic restrictions remains very, very divided. And there are also persistent myths around archaeological heritage protection that can make it harder to introduce new solutions. And for example, the Summer Street project on Riga Street, when on summer weekends it is closed for traffic, it helped to reduce CO2 emissions and improve air quality. But pedestrian flow data showed that simply restricting traffic is not enough on its own. We need a mix of lots of other activities to attract more people and make the space feel livelier. And yeah, overall, the public outdoor space in TAES Old Town faces several challenges, but at the same time, it has a strong potential to become an attractive and lively place in the city.
Yeah, I hope that the greening plan will help with this complex dialogue between all of these questions. But Tartu's approach is grounded in science also and international cooperation, as Anna said, drawing significantly on the experience of partners like Aarhus in Denmark. And through the project, you are monitoring everything from insects to vascular plants to make informed decisions. And how does this science-based monitoring influence the way you protect and support nature in an urban environment?
It gives us such strong support. So the main message of our Urban Life Circus project is that today, in our current climate situation, we need to make a serious effort towards the urban environment being a better place for all kinds of species that live here, from people to birds and animals to pollinators and even bacteria. So the key here is that the initiative to apply for the project at all came from Tartu University, which is a big system that works hand in hand with the city all the time throughout history. So as an impulse, we, Tartu and the university, targeted the topics and project areas and the necessary actions to improve both the health of green spaces and also the connectivity. So ever since the project was approved and started, we've built our actions on decisions on the best knowledge that we have today. So we started by university targeting green spaces that they monitor, but they built it up on comparable pairs. So each green space has a patch that has sort of changed management regimes, and then side by side there's an area that's kept as it has been done all the time. So we have a baseline study. So studies were made in terms of plants, soil as well, pollinators, insects, including ticks, which is a big issue when we talk about biodiversity in cities, birds, including bats, and also people's immunity. So the study is both made in pairs in terms of like in spatial terms, and also it's been repeated. So it depends on the group of on the type of studies. It's either baseline and sort of the after situation, or sometimes it has three. It has like an interim thing as well. So all of the actions that we've made at our green spaces, they stem from these findings. So in terms of green spaces, we change management. We add plant species by planting, because plants are, well, it tends to be like the baseline for urban biodiversity. If you have a richer plant life, it automatically includes a better soil structure, better runoff management. It attracts pollinators, insects that in turn attract more birds, small mammals, and it's good to look at, and it sort of improves your immunity as well. So we do a lot of our plantings together with the community. We include the public, and we also include enterprises and collectives that work close by. And it's also a sort of knowledge-based solutions because it improves nature education, because everything that you get included into, you get a lot more information on the hows and the whys, and people have said that it's helped a lot. And also life within a good and rich microbiome is also one of the keys in our project, because if you maintain a good contact with actually functioning nature, well, it's best if you have the ability to work in a garden or work in a park, so you have really, really close contact with the soil and the plants and all the insects. But it also it's already good if you walk through an urban area that has a much richer environment. And also, it's super important that we provide a good and rich environment for kids to play in on a daily basis. So also the academics in Tartu University have made a survey about the different elements natural elements in kindergartens, and studied the effect on the immunity and allergies of children depending on the richness of the environment. So also with as a really simple trick, we've tried to replace some really sort of technical or catalog solutions of playgrounds with simply providing logs, and it's helped so much. Kids have enjoyed it on a great level. So it's been so much easier, safer, and it gives us like good confidence and a good backup to rely on academics as our partners.
Yeah, and it sounds like you could say that everything is always connected somehow, and sometimes you don't need too much, especially for some happy kids. But ensuring the local plans don't exist in a vacuum, as it would be just some document. It is critical for their long-term survival. Liene, how important is it for Riga to coordinate its local strategy with national level climate goals to ensure the legal and financial support needed for these plans?
In case of Riga, coordination with national, EU and international level policies is very important. So when we started development of the plan, first thing we did, we looked at all these documents. We looked at national and Riga's long-term strategies. We looked at legislation on climate, and one of the most important documents in our case is the Latvia's adaptation plan for 2030. So actually, Riga's greening plan is, I would say, not a comprehensive adaptation plan, but part of the adaptation plan that we will develop in the future. So when we look at this national adaptation plan, we see it foresees recommendations and actions to be taken by municipalities. And now when we looked at almost the final product of our greening plan, we see that we have successfully implemented many aspects of the national adaptation plan. We are looking at the nature-based solutions, but additionally, we have implemented, developed solutions to limit development of invasive species. So we are looking at the biodiversity. We are looking at development of a monitoring framework, and we are looking how to implement these aspects in Riga's development planning. So overall, I would say that we have taken into account these aspects of national climate goals to ensure financing for our plan. But additionally, we know that the measures that will be implemented through the urban greening plan will create multiple co-benefits to our climate goals. We know that in the area of energy conservation, we can reduce our energy consumption in the hottest days of the summer if the green infrastructure is developed where it should be for the cooling of buildings. We know that green streets can promote micromobility and thus reduce energy consumption in the transport sector. And finally, something that we did when we developed the urban greening plan is we looked at upcoming legislation. So we looked at nature restoration law, we look at communal water treatment directive. So these are not they're not still implemented at national level, but we know that they are coming, and through this plan, we want to be ready to the upcoming legislation as well. Thank you.
And also the history showed that once a technology is written into national regulations, its adoption grows exponentially, but getting it there is a major hurdle. Ante, from a local policy perspective, how difficult is it to get NBS requirements written into official municipal regulations compared to traditional grey construction?
Well, I'd say it's quite difficult because grey infrastructure is still the default, and it has established standards, predictable design routines, and clear maintenance models. And on the other hand, nature-based solutions are still often seen as something experimental, although they solve very practical problems. And in TASIS, we plan to integrate these principles into our spatial planning framework, but the challenge is not only legal, it is also about trust and maintenance. For example, many people still worry that rain gardens could increase the risk of flooded basements, and rather than reduce pressure on the stormwater system. There are also very practical concerns. Who will maintain these solutions, how often, with what knowledge and what budget, and it overall can be quite difficult. And also introducing nature-based solution requirements would require cooperation with the municipal water management company. But from their perspective, these solutions do not necessarily bring a direct benefit, and there's currently no regulation framework that would provide compensation or another clear initiative for the companies to take participation. And compared to traditional grey infrastructure, nature-based solutions often require more like cross-sector coordination, and that makes it harder to embed them in formal municipal regulations. And putting nature-based solution requirements in the territorial plan, which is a legal document for municipality, it is also not that easy, because during public consultations on the territorial plan, resistance from the residents and developers is almost guaranteed, because most people immediately view new regulations as some kind of bureaucratic load that will only delay projects and drive up costs. And by introducing new regulations in the territorial plan, there is a risk that it will take longer to approve because of the public opinion. And in the land use and construction regulations, we plan to include the green infrastructure as an integral part, and specifying the minimum proportion of green areas in development zones, as well as requirements for integrating green solutions into the projects. So for us, the greening plan is a step towards making these solutions more understandable and more standard. And we need to show that the rain garden is not just a flower bed, that the green infrastructure is not just an extra decoration layer. It is a part of climate adaptation infrastructure, but to make it credible, we also need good technical design, clear maintenance, and clear responsibilities, and most important, communication with the residents to communicate why it is needed.
And staying on this local level, mainstreaming also means giving residents the tools to contribute, also, as you all already mentioned, to the city's greening from their own backyards. Tartu has an app for private gardens and apartment associations to assess their own biodiversity. Anna, why is involving private gardens so essential to the success of an overall city greening strategy?
Tartu has a very long history of very green neighborhoods, of either private houses or small apartment buildings that have very rich gardens. So the overall picture is quite lush if you look at Tartu from above. Regardless, we of course face contemporary pressures to establish more lawns because people tend to grow less food in their gardens, more parking or paving in general, and bringing alien species that are just seemingly more attractive and more colorful. So including gardens and apartment collectives or unions is like including a big secret force that's at our hand. So we have a lot of privately owned land and property when compared to, let's say, Central or Western Europe. So we published a set of guidelines as a super cute booklet that includes all the techniques and successes and also mistakes that we've faced when raising biodiversity at green spaces. And we really have people thanking us, saying that sometimes it's hard to persuade your neighbors or even family as to why would you use methods to raise biodiversity in your home garden, like mow less, which is the simplest conflict between neighbors all the time. But we also have a grant that homeowners can apply for. We provide a list of actions that we support, like sowing or planting or establishing a rain bed or bioswale or removing pavement even. So every garden can make their sort of wish list. And we form a short list of applicants, sadly based on the order of registering, because otherwise it would be too difficult to make some kind of grading system of how good your application looks like. So we rank them based on speed only. We meet them with consultants, with landscape architects. We look at their wish list and we form like a sketch of a plan that they can later use. They can make do all the works, and then we can pay the grants out later on. So it's a really good force. Plus it works also really well as a nature education method. Again, if you've heard about the things, if you've tried them out yourself, then you can support the community in general as a voter. So there's a lot more people who are educated and really know what to ask for.
And is this mentioned app related to this grant, or is it some extra tool?
It's an extra tool.
Okay. And it's also for private owners. And what can they do in this app?
The app is for anyone, really. You can also be a representative of a union. You can have a look at your plot, add elements that you already have, like existing like areas of different surfaces or different elements like bushes and trees. It calculates the baseline level of biodiversity richness, and then you can make add a different layer of elements that you would maybe propose into your garden, and then see how the different columns change. Does your wish really improve the biodiversity, or how much?
Okay, so it like calculates the biodiversity, and they can choose, oh, if I want to make it more richer, then I will choose this plant. Okay,
Yeah.
That's also an interesting tool. And to scale up these solutions, we need more than just public interest. We need to prove their economic convenience to city councils. Zand, has having a formal urban greening plan already made it easier for Valmier to apply for or secure external grants to fund these projects? Of course, we know that it's not officially yet done, but maybe there are some plans already.
Yes, I would say definitely having a formal urban greening or climate adaptation plan generally makes it much easier for a city to compete for external funding. We already are making new projects and we are using data from not finished but from our green plan. So it already works as an example that it's much easier to use the data which is in this plan, and also who gets this project and reads, it's much easier to evaluate that it really works in different levels together, such as part of a long-term strategy and backed by data and aligned with measurable climate goals and integrated into official municipal planning documents. It all goes together and works as a proof that we are working in even in the small areas, but it works for much larger scale than you actually can think at the beginning. So yes, there is no doubt that this document will work very efficiently for municipality, and I would say that I hope that every municipality will create something similar for the future. But because it's kind of handbook for us to work in everyday life, and it's much easier to communicate in different scales with different people, and so only I can say something positive about this document, so no doubt about that.
Moving to the maybe last topic and adding also the future legacy. Ultimately, these plans are for the people. Involvement of local communities allow us to include local knowledge in our planning. Liana, how does Riga involve citizens in mapping these problem areas to ensure that plan reflects the actual needs of neighborhoods?
So first of all, we have carried out multiple initiatives to engage citizens, not only in the mapping, but in the development of the plan overall. We organized different events which were open to public. And one event that I would like to highlight is, for now, first and only climate assembly that we have had in Latvia. It was dedicated to the Riga's urban greening plan. So we are quite privileged to have that. And so citizens of the city developed recommendations for the plan, and currently, while we are developing our policies and measures, we are as well integrating the recommendations of Riga's inhabitants. Specifically for the mapping, we have developed policies and measures in this plan that will involve cities' inhabitants. So we want their input in the specific mapping of problematic areas. So in event of heavy precipitation, we want to know where exactly the flooding occurs. Maybe there are some spaces that our stormwater runoff model has not indicated. And then we not only want our inhabitants to map these territories, but we want them to identify territories where more green infrastructure is needed. And if they wish to, they can even get involved in the development. So we will be providing material support to cities' inhabitants to have more green infrastructure, maybe by providing soil and plants or via other instruments. But overall, yeah, of course, actual needs of inhabitants and neighborhoods is very crucial to the greening plan.
And also part of the involvement is also education, as you also mentioned, teaching citizens, especially the youth, to see the value in a biodiverse city. Tartu recently published a guide called A City Fair or Bare, summarizing 5 years of experience. Anna, what is the most important message you hope other city planners and citizens can take away from this practical guide?
It's become a really fascinating example of how communication and marketing actually work. So we began our interventions at downtown parks at about 7 years ago by targeting a few places where we just mow less, or establishing our first urban meadow, or placing our first logs of deadwood to parks. So we've also always included clear initial communication of what is planned, and we always have a professional photographer who documents the interventions, and then also the results at all different really good times over the year. So for instance, when questions arose whether we should or should not leave plants growing over winter, which means not deadheading or not cutting them back in autumn, then again our photos helped a great deal with showing how, firstly, how stunning it looks like, and how it also affects wildlife, like who hides in the grass, or who eats what sorts of seeds or what sort of berries. So it seems like a super simple thing that's actually not a part of the activities of to really document your actions well and making them look good, and it's so much easier to persuade your public and mainly your politicians with what is good and how it should look like.
And closing with the maybe last question or last comments, as we look towards to the future, we want to know what this strategic planning will actually look like on the ground, also when all of these projects end. And maybe in 1 or 2 sentences, each representative could comment what will be the most visible sign to a resident that our greening plan or other types of city greening initiatives were a success. Maybe Riga could start, and maybe then Valmiera, Cēsis, and Tartu could end.
So August 2027 in the policy planning terms is very soon, but we hope that we will see in the physical cities infrastructure first signs of the greening plan. We hope that the most problematic streets of the city center will gradually become greener, that we will see less pavement, more trees, more shrubs. So we hope that the first projects will be already implemented by that time.
Yes, I will continue. So actually, I hope that we will see this reflection to inhabitants, that actually, yes, inhabitants will become healthier and happier, and so meaning that they will become more active, and they will be willing to spend more time outdoors, going more into nature, and this nature will become closer to their homes and routes what they are using usually. So that, yeah, I think that will be the best how we can measure actually the healthier mentally and physically inhabitants. And this is our of course it's much further than next year, but in general, yes. So hopefully we will achieve this.
Yeah, I think we should be realistic. The city won't feel completely transformed and different by August 2027, because urban renewal takes time, especially in a historic setting. Trees don't grow overnight, and residents won't feel the effects of climate adaptation at the moment the plan is approved. But by then, I think the most visible sign of success in Cēsis will be that several street reconstruction projects will already include green infrastructure solutions at the design stage, especially in the old town. And Cēsis will be working on street reconstruction designs where nature-based solutions are included from the beginning, not added at the end. So the most visible success in 2027 may not yet be a fully shaded street, but a clear shift in how we design streets. And if the green infrastructure becomes a part of the normal design brief, together with mobility, heritage, drainage, and public space quality, then the greening plan has already started to work.
Change in Tartu is already very visible. We've deliberately picked the places with biggest changes to a very, very prominent downtown location so that the change is under your eyes at all times. So it has risen, of course, a lot of questions and opposition as well, but this has drawn more attention to the issue. So we regard this as great success.
Okay, thank you. I think these are great points to close also this discussion. We have learned today that a resilient city is not built by accident. It is built through precise strategic planning, from the climate resilient blueprints in Latvia to the green ring of biodiversity in Tartu. We are creating the operating system for a more sustainable future. A huge thank you to Liene, Zanda, Anze, and Anna for sharing how we move from pilot projects to permanent policy. Let's remember that a city that plans for nature is a city that plans also for its people. However, for these strategic plans to truly take root and thrive, we must look to the generation that will eventually inherit them. Join us in our next episode as we look at how to educate the youth and open new doors for young specialists who will lead our cities into a resilient future. Keep planning, keep greening, and keep adapting.